but so few of us are willing to talk about the things that are causing men to take their lives, such as domestic violence. Like, the data is about between 6 and 11% of men being abused will consider suicide in their life. In the UK, I mentioned it, we have, yeah, in the UK, we have about 1.5 million men being abused. In America, it's obviously more than that. If you just think about 10% of that are at risk to suicide, that's such an enormous number. And no one's talking about male victims of abuse. And yet everyone's talking about male suicide. So it's like, there's no point talking about male suicide if you're not willing to talk about the things that men are talking about themselves. So I've always found it frustrating how we tell men to talk and open up, but no one wants to talk about the things they're telling them, such as losing jobs or losing children. Like, a lot of fathers attempt and complete suicide when they lose their children in family courts, and I can totally understand that. And one of the ways I've had my mind change is learning that male suicide isn't primarily a mental health problem. It's many different problems combined. And most suicidal men don't consider themselves as having a mental health problem at all. They'll have like a child custody problem, or they're being abused, or they've lost their job, they're in debt. So that's a fundamental change. I think we need to all get on board and stop pathologizing suicide as some sort
Taking a
of
look at the external stressors.
yeah. And like, it's this the combination and culmination of personal stresses that push men to seeing suicide as a way out.
You brought up the word of the day, toxic masculinity, and saying that, some keyboard warrior might try and reduce the complexity of the human experience, in this case, a man's experience, down to this idea of something being situated in them, the idea of toxic masculinity. Uh, what are your thoughts on the term? What kind of effect do you think this has on men, or our perspectives on maleness, masculinity?
Well, toxic masculinity as a phrase went through the same journey as the red pill, when it started off as a word used by the mythopoetic men's movement to basically describe a type of masculinity that's resulting from a lack of fatherhood or lack of a male presence. And it was used by basically a bunch of hippies to talk in good faith about the importance of male role models. And then it's been adopted. In like 2015, in the wake of Me Too, it changed its meaning completely, a bit like the red pill. But yeah, obviously, I hate it. I don't find it useful whatsoever. It's just another blanket assertion that vilifies men. Frankly, is falling out of favor these days, and it basically suggests that men die by suicide because they don't seek help because they're toxic. But then again, there's just things called data, and if you actually look at data, a study I've been looking at recently, it was in Manchester University, and they actually studied men who died by suicide, who completed suicide, middle-aged men, and they found that 91% of the men who died by suicide had actually sought help. So more than 9 in 10 men who died by suicide had actually sought help from health or mental health services, or police, or whoever else, crisis support, and they still died by suicide. I don't understand that. Saying men don't seek help is not true, because 9 in 10 of men who did die by suicide did seek help and still died by suicide. And of the men who died by suicide, of those who were assessed by a clinician, 80% of them were seen as low risk or no risk. So these are men that
80%.
died. So these are men that died by suicide. 80% were seen as low risk or no risk. And yet we're still blaming the men. I'm like, he sought help.
Is there a specific area that you think would start to kind of move this conversation along?
I mean, suicide has got to be the number one priority, not just for men and boys, but for society in general. When you consider how many men are dying young and how many men are dying by suicide, it's the number one risk to my life and your life, and it'll be the number one risk to our lives until we're 50, and probably beyond that. That is such a massive problem, and the way we see and understand male suicide, as we discussed earlier, is fundamentally flawed. And we know it's flawed because although we're talking about it more and more, and I'm thankful we are, we've just had the worst year yet for male suicide. For the worst year this century for male suicide in the UK. For all of our talk and kind words, it's actually not getting better. It's getting worse still. So a fundamental shift is needed in how we talk about suicide, particularly in men, that moves outside of this biomedical model of suicidal pain that assumes it's all in here, some sort of chemical imbalance to be corrected through medication of some sort, and to start to see it like we described, where it's not men who are mentally unwell, it's men who are put under extreme stress and pressure, commiserated by many different issues, so many discussed, many more I can't even begin to comprehend, that are pushing men to suicide as some sort of no way out outcome. And they're not mentally unwell. The majority of them are not mentally unwell at all. They're just doing what they think is the only thing they have left to do, and like they've got no choice. A change in the way we see male suicide is a great way of seeing all the other different issues that I talk about. We don't want to talk about domestic violence, sure, but men who die by suicide as a result of abuse, I think we can talk about. Men who are losing their jobs and die by suicide, men who are losing children and die by suicide. It's a really important faucet through which so many issues can be accessed and talked about in a way that isn't quite as controversial as talking about them directly. If one thing can change, or if I could start one conversation, it would be about changing our approach and understanding of suicide in men in a way that's a bit more holistic and not based on stupid catchphrases like toxic masculinity and whatever else, and have a bit more compassion for these men that are living miserable lives and deserve help.